This is Speaking of Writers. I'm Steve Richards. This is the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards. The book is The Door Behind Me. The author is A.J Bozeman, his first book. Kristy Ventura is a teenage girl with the deepest of emotional and psychological problems, from family drama. Her mother left her at a young age, and she blames her dad, to constantly starting fights with people. Kristy has a hard time keeping herself in check and out of trouble. And as a result, she lost what she considered her best partner, Violet Wayne. One day, Kristy tries to make up with Violet, but then finds out that Violet was in a completely different part of the globe. From this point, Kristy jumps through a plethora of hoops to get the slightest bit of interaction with Violet. Kristy understands that she must do everything in her limited amount of power to reunite with Violet and get a step closer to repairing her shattered spirit. This book serves as the debut publication for A.J Bozeman, an author residing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A.J graduated from Hopkins High School in 2019 and was one of the two speakers at that ceremony. A.J is a music lover ranging from genres such as rap, pop, EDM, indie folk, and house music. A.J is also a college graduate, recently receiving a Bachelor's of Arts degree in psychology from Metropolitan State University. A.J has maintained a passion for creative writing from the early age of 12, and this passion was fully realized as he began writing The Door Behind Me in June of 2020. A.J is an avid fan of the 2020 critically acclaimed video game The Last of Us Part 2, which actually served as the primary inspiration for this novella. Happy to have for the first time A.J Bozeman join me here on the Speaking of Writers podcast. Welcome, A.J.
How you doing? That was a great introduction. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And a great first book for you here, too. So there was inspiration from this video game. Talk about that on the overall story here.
Yeah, more specifically, I mean, the game overall was a very enjoyable experience to play. But more specifically within the game was the dynamic between Ellie and Dina, which were the two, I guess, main protagonists for the game. And just taking bits and pieces of their interactions with each other, from their romantic moments to their arguments, and how you could really see like how much they love each other resonating through that game. In the midst of maintaining that relationship, they're pretty much going through the end of the world at that point. So them being strong and sticking together through a tough time like that. So I wanted to just take that bit of the game and just incorporate it in this story, but have it be something completely different. I mean, in this book, it's not like, the world's coming to an end. It's just one party is trying to regain that. So more specifically, that is the main inspiration for this book, is the relationship between the two characters.
Speaking of characters, how did you create Kristy?
It was that was a challenging portion of it. I mean, at the early stages of the book, she actually had an entirely different name. There's a bunch of creative detours that I took writing a book this big. I mean, it's my first time, diving into something like this, so there's definitely a bunch of detours that I took. But with creating Kristy, it was I wanted to create a character that is deeply flawed, but as you read and you progress through the story, you understand why she's so flawed. And you get bits and pieces of where you may feel a little empathy or sympathy for her because, depending on what the reader's gone through, you may, understand what it's like to, be raised in a single parent household, or have a parent that may be slightly overbearing but means the best, or, doesn't, you have a hard time like managing your emotions and making rational decisions, which is clear as day when it comes to reading this book. It's clear as day with Kristy. But then you get moments like where she reflects on her first date with Violet, of her first interaction, and how Violet tends to calm her down, or even parts of the book where she, I guess, gains a new parent or guardian in Renee, and she is also calm in those moments as well. So it's a mix of creating a character that doesn't have it all together, but I guess, like I said, you generate some kind of empathy or sympathy towards them as the story progresses.
I mentioned in the introduction you started writing this book, The Door Behind Me, during the height of COVID in June of 2020. Was that helpful for you? I'm sure you had a lot of time, like we all did.
Oh yeah, that's actually kind of one of the main catalysts. Other than The Last of Us Part Two, that's actually one of the main triggers for starting the book, because I had just finished my first year of college and I had nothing else to do. I had plans for that summer, but you know, especially in Minnesota, it wasn't safe to leave the house for reasons that we are pretty much already understand.
Hmm.
Um, So one night I just opened my laptop and didn't really know, I didn't even know this was going to be a full-on novel at that point. I just wanted something else to keep me occupied and keep me, focused during the day. So I just opened my laptop and just wrote something. I think I finished the first two chapters, I think in a week. And then after revising it and looking it over, I just liked what I had and I just continued with it. So then I came up with the title, came up with the other characters and the settings, and went from there. And 2.5 years later, the book was finished.
Any issues with writer's block during that writing process? And if so, how did you deal with it?
100% definitely writer's block occurred with this story, and it is occurring now as I'm still juggling which story I'm invested in more as I'm trying to continue writing. Um, I would say writer's block is just a part of the process. There's no real way. I wouldn't say avoid it. Like anyone who wants to be a writer, who wants to, you know, excuse me, delve into being an author, definitely don't shy away from writer's block. It's part of the process. So I would just say embrace it. Even when you get those moments where you may write a full page just gets done or a full chapter gets done, even when you just write one word or one line and then you don't touch it for the next few days to a week. Moments like that, you're still making progress. You're still getting a step closer to finishing the story. People always say slow progress is better than no progress, especially with something as big as a book. You definitely want to, savor those moments where, okay, you wrote one line, but hey, it's one line more than you had before. So um, definitely don't shy away from writer's block. Embrace it. It's a part of the process. And once it's all over, it's going to be it's a very satisfying conclusion in the end.
AJ, as part of the process, did you use an outline here? And did you know the ending when you started out?
I did. I actually did use an outline, but the outline is actually it has bullet points that some of the chapters it's kind of accurate, but it ended up getting actually a good chunk of the ending of the book got changed as I got closer to it. So I did use an outline, and I'm happy you brought up a different ending because there was a much different ending, a much darker ending for the story, and it was actually going to involve Kristy finally meeting up with Violet and Violet finally seeing that Kristy wasn't honest the whole way through, like seeing that she was lying the whole time about changing her attitude and changing her ways and, not being so quick to want to get violent. She basically lied just to be with Violet, and Violet saw through that. So it was going to get to a point where Violet was going to run away and just try to get as far away from possible as Kristy because she couldn't handle it. And I forgot how I said it was going to happen, but at the end of the story, Violet was going to end up passing away as a result of Kristy's actions. And Kristy's guilt was going to drive her to basically do the same thing to herself, but ends up getting saved by her estranged mother. Reason I did not go with that ending is because throughout this story, you see so many dark patches that Kristy goes through from, finding out that Violet is no longer in town, getting into it with her dad, basically being a runaway and, seeing the friend that took her in, her issues with her own relationship as well. There's a lot that goes on in the story. And I feel like the ending that I went with within the story, it kind of gives the reader and it gives Kristy and it gives everyone, every focal character in the story, a bit of a break, a bit of a relief, a bit of um a burden that goes off of their shoulders. Everyone finds their closure, a family gets back together, and the relationship may not have went well, but it's healthier for everybody in the end.
Now, we don't like to give away too much, but
Mm.
any couple, three chapters your favorites to write in this one?
Probably the fourth one, where it's a reflection of the first time Kristy had met Violet and they danced around. And then I probably would say my favorite chapters are the one that talk about the relationship, the first date, the second date, and then I guess probably the chapter that Kristy finally or gets help to get the courage to finally go overseas and reunite with Violet because it just even as I was writing it, I was getting very excited. Like I just want to get to the point where they finally meet up. Like let's go, let's go, let's go. So hopefully the reader will get that same feeling as well. But it was definitely exciting for me to write those out because all this baggage that we've like 9 chapters deep. We know the struggle. We know the main point that Kristy's trying to do, and we're finally at that point, and we get there, and it's like it's about time. So now we can just build off of this. So definitely my favorite chapters were the reflection of their first meeting, their second date, and then when Kristy finally meets up with Violet again.
Now, AJ, I know the story is written out of order. Why did you use that technique?
it just felt easier. And it was, I guess it made the writing process more fun. And sometimes it helped with the writer's block. I even got a little bit of advice from, my dad when I told him about the book, because it's just like when an artist makes an album and you see how the album is structured and like how like certain tracks go in order. The artist doesn't necessarily, they didn't make the songs potentially in the order that they're put out to the public, like the last track could have been the first track they ever recorded. So I kind of took that mentality to the story and applied it that way. Plus, like you mentioned before, I'm an avid music lover, so that technique kind of made its way into here as well. And it made um, I guess was more like it made it seem like it's more of a movie. Like it's when it's in present day and when it's not. So when a certain big point happens in the story, then you get a bit of a flashback as to, okay, how do we get here? And it kind of gives the reader a more of an understanding of the overall characters. For Kristy, for example, and for Violet, like why is Kristy so invested into Violet in the first place? That's where the chapters being out of order comes in, because then you see how she's emotionally affected by being around Violet. So I think it just helped with the overall story as far as making more sense of the characters.
What's been the response, reaction from your family and friends on
They've
this
all
book?
in, they've all enjoyed it. Even a few coworkers of mine at the job I'm currently at, they've had some critiques about, Kristy's temperament and being, irrational and just feisty and whatever. But for the most part, it's um definitely been a positive pouring of support from family, friends, and coworkers, and it's only gotten stronger, and I'm eternally grateful for that, because this was something I didn't think it was going to happen. Because as a kid, I did not like reading, so
Mm.
I didn't think I would ever get into writing my own book as an adult. So yeah, this is something that I've definitely enjoyed.
Did you always know that you were a pretty good storyteller, though?
That's a good question. It took a while to develop that skill. I think it was just a matter of me just seeing different ways of how storytelling is done, from video games to music to books and even movies. I actually had an idea of, kind of like with Marvel and how they do the different cinematic universe type deal. My initial idea, and I don't know if I'm still going to go follow through with it, was write more, create more characters, and then bring them all together in the same universe and give them a center plot to do. I don't know if I'm still going to do that, because that idea has kind of been done to death and it's not as original, even though it would be fun to make and it would take a lot of time. I don't know if that vision is still there, but I think being a good storyteller took a long time to develop. I don't know when it triggered me to finally go all in with it, but um, I guess I always had it, just didn't know it yet until I started with this.
What was the feeling like when you finally completed this and it got published?
Totally euphoric, totally
Mm.
euphoric. And I even not even when it got published, just getting it done, just like writing it, because I didn't really know how I wanted it to stop or how long I wanted it to be. It was just a matter of what made sense and where was a good point to, stop the story altogether. So, and I remember the day I actually finished writing it too, and it was an incredibly blissful feeling. Um, and I just reminded myself, even if it never sees the light of day, if it never gets published, it's like I have a fully written piece of work in my possession right now that can't be taken away. So that was satisfying enough, as just getting it done. Getting it published was a whole different, process. But once it finally happened, like before, it was a great feeling. So it was a process. It was a lengthy one. It was sometimes, a stressful one, but it paid off. And I'm currently back in that process right now. But it's definitely worth it because something came together really special to me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what's next for you and your writing.
I'm currently in the midst of trying to pick which two stories. I'm currently writing or have two um, books or ideas in the works right now. I'm just trying to figure out which one I'm more invested in, which I probably should dial back a little bit, because it's probably making the writing process more difficult than it should be, is being invested in two ideas
Mm.
simultaneously. But um, yeah, I mean, I even have the copy of the book here with me right now. And um, I just set it up and I look at it every day before going to work, or even when I'm in the house, just to remind myself, like, you know, it came to fruition, it came to life. So truly anything is possible. So I'm definitely gonna try my hand at this one more time, and hopefully the end result is something that'll come together and it's better and bigger than this. But we'll see.
And AJ, what's the main message you would like readers to take away from The Door Behind Me?
Main message from The Door Behind Me: nothing good gets away. Sometimes patience is stressful. It's tough to have. It's hard to do. It's can be annoying to be patient, but it's 100% necessary. Um, yeah, nothing good gets away. Just sometimes just let the chips fall where they may. And sometimes you do have to be proactive and take action to make changes. But overall, at the end of the day, we're all in this life together. We're all looking for the same thing. We're all looking to be at peace. We're all looking to, you know, fall in love and have that, that person you want to grow old with. We're all looking for that. So it's out there. The world's very big. It's a very big place. So if you don't feel like you have it now, like I said, have patience, and it's going to be hard, but it's not impossible. It's definitely a necessary tool to have.
The book is The Door Behind Me. The author is A.J. Bozeman. His first book, there it is. It is available. Get it at writersrepublic.com, barnesandnoble.com, and amazon.com as well. And if your independent bookstore doesn't have it, tell them to get it. Tell them to order it as well. AJ, thank you so much for joining me.
Not a problem, man. Thank you for your time.
And this is the Speaking of Writers podcast. This is Speaking of Writers. I'm Steve Richards.